War is hell, unless you're selling the bombs. Think that sounds harsh? Maybe, but let's be real. Every time a war breaks out, certain people pop champagne. And spoiler, it's not the soldiers. It's not the refugees. It's not the civilians stuck in the middle. Rather, it's the same familiar group, cashing checks in quiet boardrooms while the world burns outside. And the craziest part, this isn't new. It's not just some modern military-industrial thing. This has been going on for centuries. From the Roman Empire to the US invasion of Iraq, war has always had winners, just not the kind you'd expect. Buckle up, because today we're pulling back the curtain on one of the world's oldest scams: how war makes some people very rich and why those people keep showing up every single time. Let's start with a name you probably know: Halliburton. Back in the early 2000s, when the US invaded Iraq, Halliburton was handed contracts worth billions. Yes, with a B, to rebuild the very country we just bombed. Who approved those deals? Fun fact, the company's former CEO was none other than Vice President Dick Cheney. Wait, it gets worse. Halliburton didn't just rebuild roads and power plants. They made money providing meals to soldiers, building private prisons, supplying oil infrastructure, and sometimes even charging the government for services they didn't fully deliver. A government report once said they couldn't account for over $1 billion in spending. But this is just one modern example. Let's rewind a bit. During World War II, American car manufacturers, Ford, General Motors, Chrysler, literally stopped making cars and switched to building tanks, airplanes, and weapons. And you might think, well, that was patriotic, right? Sure, until you find out that profits for defense contractors doubled during the war, while the rest of the country was rationing sugar and sending sons off to die. Wall Street was throwing a party. And here's something they never taught you in school. JP Morgan financed both sides of World War I. Yeah, let that sink in. They helped Britain with loans, but also helped companies in Germany move money around before the war even started. Because business is business, right? If you're feeling a little nauseous, you're not alone. Imagine this: you're a soldier in a muddy trench, bullets flying. You haven't showered in days, but 3,000 miles away, a guy in a tailored suit just approved a deal that earns him $20 million for every 100 tanks you risk your life to drive. And no, this isn't conspiracy talk. It's just history. Verified, well-documented, boring old history. Even in the more recent wars like Afghanistan, private contractors walked away with fortunes. Companies like DynCorp and KBR were paid tens of billions to do jobs that the military used to do itself. And surprise, surprise, these private companies overcharged, underdelivered, and still got paid. Some even billed the government for ghost employees, literally people who didn't exist. And while all this money is flowing, what's happening to veterans? Thousands come home with PTSD, struggle to access healthcare, and face homelessness. The same country that just spent $14 million per hour on war suddenly can't afford to support the people who fought in it. How convenient. But here's where it gets truly mind-melting. War isn't just good for weapons companies. It's a massive cash cow for oil companies, construction firms, even tech giants. Ever wonder why wars always seem to happen in resource-rich areas? Middle East conflict, oil, African conflicts, minerals and rare earths, Ukraine, wheat, gas, and strategic geography. Here's the playbook. Destabilize a region, send in troops under the name of freedom or humanitarian aid, and then award massive contracts to rebuild the mess. And if you also happen to get control of pipelines, ports, or rare metals used in smartphones, well, that's just a bonus, right? But don't just take my word for it. Warren Buffett, yes, the king of compound interest himself, once said, "In every war, there's one sure winner, the arms manufacturers." Even he, a guy who usually stays miles away from political controversy, had to admit that there's a system in place. A system that turns war into business. Now, let's meet someone you probably haven't heard of. Basil Zaharoff, a Greek arms dealer in the late 1800s. The guy was nicknamed the Merchant of Death. He sold weapons to multiple countries at the same time. France and Germany? Yep. Turkey and Greece? Yep. He once sold submarines to countries that didn't even have a coastline. That's not satire. That actually happened. And guess what? He died a millionaire with a knighthood. This isn't a glitch in the system. It is the system. And it's not about one country or one era. It's about incentives. If war makes some people richer than peace ever could, what motivation is there to avoid it? Every time there's tension between nations, the stock prices of defense companies like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Northrop Grumman go up. Not after the bombs fall, before, because investors know the pattern. War talk is equal to government contracts, which is then equal to millions of dollars. In fact, during the 2022 Russia-Ukraine war, US defense stocks rose 10 to 15% in just the first few weeks. Meanwhile, millions of Ukrainians were fleeing their homes. But if you had the right stocks, you were making money every hour a city was being bombed. And here's the kicker, even your tax dollars play a role. When you pay taxes, a portion goes to the military budget. In the US, that's about half of discretionary spending. That's over $800 billion a year, and a big chunk of that doesn't go to soldiers. It goes to private defense contractors, lobbyists, and corporations. So, in a weird twist, you're paying for this. You fund the bombs, the planes, the contracts. You fund the reconstruction. And then, somehow, you also fund the PR campaigns that make it sound like all of this is just how the world works. But here's the part they don't want you to ask. What if peace isn't profitable enough? What if war, for some people, is just better business? Because if war is predictable and contracts are guaranteed, and politicians keep getting campaign donations from defense companies, then peace starts to sound like bad economics. Now, I'm not saying everyone in power is some cartoon villain sitting in a dark room stroking a cat, but the incentives are all there. The systems reward conflict, the same names keep showing up, and the people making the most money, they're not the ones fighting. They're the ones watching. And if that doesn't make you question everything, then I don't know what will. So next time you hear someone say, we need to go to war, ask, who profits? Because history has shown us war is almost never about protecting people, it's about protecting interests. It's about control, about money, and yes, about power. And until we start asking harder questions, the same people will keep getting rich, while the rest of us foot the bill. If this video made you rethink things, or maybe even made you a little uncomfortable, smash that like button. Seriously, it helps get this message in front of more people. And if you've got thoughts, drop them in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want to go even deeper into how the world really works, check out more videos on this channel. Trust me, it's worth it.